AudiobookMore Hubs that provoke. Part 2. These are my views on some of the issues that are always current in our society. They may not be fully and unquestionably right, nor will they be a farce, and completely devoid of merit. Author Roy T. James. Chapter 3. How to make humans live in peace. Why humans do not live in peace. Why do they find enemies among their own, unlike all the other forms of life? What do we need to do? Isn't this a strong indication that there is something wrong with our lifestyle, or our priorities? What can we do right now? During all my years in the Navy, what I ended up doing most often was to regularize, or to seek assistance from someone else for doing the same. Referred to by many different expressions, like tying loose ends, this is an important activity that needs to be mastered by everyone. Whatever work one may do, unless one completes this activity, others shall not get a desirable image of it. One can therefore say, success in the professional sphere is in fact a reflection of one's ability to dovetail this particular activity with the unfinished jobs that happen to be left in one's charge, and that too, in a manner that does not leave a shadow on other agencies or offices. In fact, one can take up and continue with whatever activity that pleases one the most, provided one can regularize it by end of the day. And, unlike what is said in the books dealing with leadership or management, the one who can regularize the best is the ultimate winner. Regularize, in this context, becomes an all-pervasive word, most helpful to people like us who are prone to act without a well-thought-out plan. Sometimes it entails correction of records, sometimes execution of certain defined process, sometimes both. The beauty is that there is nothing that cannot be regularized. While in Navy, more so, since I was in the naval aviation where time is always at a premium, I was required to find answers to every issue that comes up in the quickest possible manner. Since speed of completion was the prime parameter, and the search for an answer routinely involved interaction with many different agencies, such answers would have been leaving some dots unconnected. And all such instances, though of a fairly insignificant nature, needed to be corrected appropriately, especially in view of surprise inspections we were always wary of, and the shortcuts that were always inviting. Now I fondly recall how the global power of regularizing used to come to my rescue often. It was that activity which made our day-to-day life a pleasant one by protecting us against the frequent and unwelcome surprises and other disturbances. The above comes to my mind whenever I read about disturbances in human societies, the more menacing and radical ones being those initiated by some abstract reason. The deeper I think about it, whether it is about the commotion about different sects, religions, linguistic groups, political leanings, or economic stature, the harder I am reminded of the soothing and calming effect every instance of regularizing used to bring along, and how we used to find that as a good reason to celebrate. I therefore feel a strong case exists for regularizing human society and the many transactions that constitute it. People can be busy for a full day with whatever entertains them the most, and take certain corrective steps before the day ends, since those are entirely dependent on each one's build. Human nature, I think, is the first entity that deserves attention, especially since in all kinds of social disturbance or commotion, human transaction is the only common factor. We all know, from the time of birth, one continues with the learning process. There is nothing that is not learned, and one's stature and capacity in life depends a lot on how good are the opportunities for this, and how well one utilizes it. Why is that we never thought of making a handbook about human nature and teaching it in a formal manner? Let us say there was a handbook, and it contained clear instructions about one's priorities in life. What those are, how to identify the one for one, and the ways to attain those. How peaceful would have been our society while being keen, sharp, and receptive or whatever was most beneficial. Presently, we are just continuing with imitating our past generations. As we progress with our life, everything new, we find, is almost overturning some ideas we were holding as dear since long. And we happily continue with mimicking the past, but for the unavoidable changes it might have forced on us. Many instances should have made us rethink about all the ideas we hold as gospel truth. You see, the approach we take while dealing with all other phenomena, whether related to animals, plants, or inanimate objects, is quite different from this. And we also know, the same is the reason for the progress the human race makes in leaps and bounds. What do we need to do? Make a handbook of human nature, specifying what it should yield, say at different circumstances. Let us have a good look at the literature already existing on this topic, and see whether it meets our need or not. There are a number of perspectives regarding the fundamental nature and substance of humans, the gist of which can be as shown below. Abstract ideas about the physical body and its spiritual element emerge here, giving rise to as many divisions for each of these approaches. Let us say, as many as an imaginative mind can produce, which all can be broadly classified into 1. Philosophical approach. A set of views that humans are purely natural phenomena, aided and assisted by other such phenomena to reach the present. Further, labels placed by society introduce mechanisms that can make alterations to it. The issue of free will, determinism and morality underlies much of the debate about human nature, and, this being an area open to opinions, the debate persists. 2. Religious views. This hold that a human is a spiritual being which was deliberately created by God. Good and evil are to be decided, based on how well human beings conform to God's hopes and ideas about man. For some religions, it entails adherence to certain rules of behavior, and for some others, it entails one to identify completely with God. The idea of an unquestionable entity is at the heart of all these, which gets evoked whenever the need is felt to end a debate. In one case, the debate goes on with no answer in sight, and in the other case, the debate ends soon with reaffirmation of the omnipotence of God. No, the above won't suffice, and one will have to come up with a new one, as far as the handbook of human nature goes, which in fact reaffirms my earlier proposition that we urgently need to regularize all that we do. And it is a vast field encompassing all that we dream, think, plan and do. Each and every one of us has the potential to contribute to it, provided we are in possession of such a book. I shall try to write the first and most important chapter of this book, one dealing with the human predisposition with the superlatives or the extremes. We tend to nurture our ability or skill since it leads us to a pleasurable experience. We start enjoying it, and we use it to do things more often, as it pleases us more. As an offshoot, we get appreciated as a talented one. Sooner than later we forget about deriving pleasure from what we do, focusing only on the comparison of one's ability with that of the rest. The latter is much easier. What happens here is, we abstract what we do and feel happy about it, while looking for ways to win competitions, for more happiness. And in any comparison, what stand out are only the extremes, in one direction, or of the reverse of it, which affects us everywhere, we losing the ability to appreciate ourselves being the immediate one. We grossly overlook the loss, especially because we tend to equate the particular ability with selfishness, which has been taught to us as an undesirable element of one's character. As a consequence, rather than self-confidence that abounds in every human child, we all grow up with a whole lot of social needs at every stage, like that of attention, approval, recognition, and encouragement, and the surest way to gain it is to be the superlative, which also we learn from experience. What is the result? A society that is always on the go, more or less specifically in search of the superlative. All living beings are naturally desirous of maximizing comfort. The few, those happen to be very clear about the destination, and also having the wherewithal to pursue it, tread a stable path. Others also continue the search. However, since the destination, or the paraphernalia necessary for a fruitful journey, or both, are not clearly known to them, they falter. All people of all age groups, whether they follow successfully their vocations, or unsuccessful in their ventures, irrespective of spiritual, political, or other leanings, can be divided into these two. Countries shall remain healthy and flourish when the former is in majority, and widespread unrest shall prevail when it isn't so. This is where regularization comes in. From the above it is well clear that human can also have a peaceful existence in this world, provided we do something that prevents the falter. For that, whenever one happens to be unclear about the destination, or feel inability in pursuing it, a mechanism should suggest an alternate path, bringing back stability. All stable systems shall remain stable as long as the fluctuations that may happen due to any reason do not cross the threshold beyond which correction is not possible. Thinking in a similar manner, one can say, as long as human feelings or reactions do not cross a certain limit, say beyond which one becomes unreasonable, human society shall remain stable. Now, to regularize. I think a good way is to establish a regimen that will put in place a self-regularizing human nature. If one takes a cue from the physical world, one can say, all self-contained systems have extensive arrangements of sensing on its own external signals of interest, and acting on it while keeping the interfering ones away. We need to incorporate something similar in our lives. In fact, such was the social life in the distant past, I think. All children were transferred to a centralized nursery, where they were given necessary lessons. This would have been saving them from the present danger. Parents, who were born in a different time, tend to confine the children to what they think should be taught to the children, which continued till they reached the age where they are fit to take up the roles they got assigned for themselves. Having already learned about their role and task in life, it won't be difficult to set their priorities, which alone is enough to self-regularize. And, unlike it is now, humans, like all other forms of life, will be engaging in activities that are helpful for a living, while desisting from things that aren't. Chapter 4. The Story of Human Names. Why is that humans have the practice of identifying each one by a name that does not carry any form of useful information or intelligence, and we stretch our imagination to find unique names. In fact, it seems long back in history, names always carried some information that is relevant to the society. Surviving old names, like Miller, Smith, etc., show an important lesson we all learn in our initial days of association, be it with programming, engineering, medicine, science, or arts, is that the variables, constants, or other entities are to be named in an intuitive way. By doing so, it becomes easy to keep track of the ones that take part in various manipulations, which will obviate such entities getting mixed up or lost, while ensuring a seamless flow of reasoning and judgment, an essential feature of success, anywhere. Now imagine we all are named in such a manner. That is, each name will somehow indicate the salient features of one's connection with the entity, constant, variable, etc., that is of current interest. A name will instantly bring up many connotations. Think of the benefits. Every social transaction should be meeting its desired end, and nothing more, and nothing less, since there is no mismatch between the sides that take part. Nobody should be feeling the need to assert oneself, and neither will one feel the urge to ignore, since all those who take part in various transactions are the ones made for each other. For example, if I need a loan, I can easily approach the person whose name shall be indicating, say a big heart, or if I need to dispose of something, I can ask the one whose name sounds needy. Gone are the irritated, disappointed, or the thankless, and the ones who are otherwise pissed off. You see, life is so simple. Aren't humans an interesting lot? They very well know all this. How, having a meaningful way of identifying an entity, makes easy everything that follows. And they apply this logic everywhere, in things living or abstract. But they have been carefully avoiding this in naming themselves, which would have altered their history. And by doing so, they opened up an easy way for misunderstandings, redundancies, and other negative aspects to find its way in and prevail, which is leading to a society that constantly face social disharmony and danger of self-annihilation. This is another proof to my theory that humans have an ulterior interest to keep everything related to life complex. Then they rightly identified the prevailing danger of disharmony, and are always busy with corrective measures, some of them permanently so. Surprisingly, almost all remedial measures are aimed at making humans more accommodating to such divergent views, ideas, and practices. Whereas, a more meaningful name would have eliminated the likelihood of such dividing forces, in the first place. What do we need to do? Why can't we think of rolling names? Suppose one is given a name at birth, which points to one's salient features that are of significance at that age. Identifying easily the child's priorities, all grown-ups can easily prevent the child from getting upset or hurt. All children will find themselves upset on few occasions. As a result, the name then can undergo changes at every stage that necessitate addition or deletion of features, like completing education, gaining experience, or other eventualities of interest. When we communicate, each of us would naturally assume relevant roles, for example, one of authority, one of receptiveness, or submission, such that there isn't any loss. And, being fully aware at all times, each and every one will feel encouraged to live up to one's name, making peace only to prevail. Chapter 5. The story behind human nature. Human nature is celebrated extensively. It gets used as a good excuse to cause inconvenience to others, or to tolerate excesses, or for something else, if it pleases one. However, a hard look reveals that all the failures of human race is due to it. And what about the instances of success? Well, suffice to say, all those who have achieved great success, other than the instances where brute superiority did the trick, did deviate from the paths that would have been the natural ones, then, hence it won't be incorrect to say, one needs to go beyond the limits set by one's nature to achieve success. If so, doesn't this call for a rethink about human nature? What is human nature? I feel, currently we think of humans to be differing greatly from all the other forms of life. But, do they? As far as the functions essential for the maintenance and progression of life is concerned, there is no great difference. Both are well equipped to perform all such functions, each following its own style and extent. But on closer look, there is a difference. One's nature, for all other species of life, support unfettered growth. For humans, unless they keep their nature in check, they will be meeting their doom very soon. And humans perpetually are busy doing something, where each one will be busy with something that is in consonance with their nature. All this points to a big difference, and this difference is the one which has come to known by the term human nature. This I think needs some explanation, since a few questions arise instantly. What is it? How did humans acquire it? What effect does it have on the fortunes of human race? And what is the optimum way of handling it? How do machines acquire nature? Let me start with inanimate objects. I think mainly owing to its environmental particularities of use and the personal priorities of the user, one can say, things acquire a sort of personality. To mention an example, think of a kitchen, a workshop, or some such place having many knives of the same type. For a particular use, one will be relying more on a specific one. And, because of this, it could get used more often, fortifying its position as an apt knife for a particular need. In some time, each piece of implement shall acquire certain peculiarity of its own, which incidentally can be noticed in its rate of wear or the frequency of replacement. When a necessity arrives, the chosen knife shall be the one where the particular peculiarity is apt for the need. Things are a little more clear when we deal with more complex objects. Think about putting to use a machine, an instrument, or some other expedient, say, a mechanism to pump water. As we install it, we shall be learning of many requirements necessary to put the particular pumping system to work satisfactorily, like appropriate fittings, joints, and connectors to fabricate and match various elements of installation, provision of electrical power, incorporation of safety devices, or protection from weather. As a result of which, quite a few devices, systems or equipment shall form a part of this installation. And to this, some more will get added up, as and when we face bottlenecks, both while installing it and during the run-in period thereafter. Thinking in a similar manner, each and every living being acquired its nature while growing up in its environment, which, over many generations, the environment being more or less the same, becomes attached permanently. However, it is susceptible to changes, domestication. For example, we can say, it is not at all difficult for a living being to be freed of its nature, provided we feel the need. How the machines are freed of its nature over a period of time, these issues shall be getting sorted out, which shall be rendering many of the elements that have become a part of the installation redundant. What normally happens in a well-run case is that we would strive to utilize some of these redundancies, sometimes as spares, sometimes for improvisation, or for selling as scrap. However, when the machine undergoes a planned overhaul, We discard all these and bring the machine to its specified consistency. This in fact is the main purpose behind an overhaul, which is an essential part of all such systems. How do humans acquire nature? Something similar is true in the case of human race too. In a long journey, which we now imagine as one from the state of a primate-like being to the relatively civilized ones of today, human race must have added quite a few particularities, whether of lifestyle, of behavior, of ambition, or of outlook. Even if it began with unintelligent design, situation need not be much different. We continue to cling on to these, though none are relevant, and quite a few are rather dangerous, as far as the needs, desirability, and living style in our current environment goes. But, quite non-intuitively we have been hanging on to these. Labeling these as the unquestionable elements of human nature, we make it rather everlasting. In fact, each of these elements are snippets of whatever was the current events of significance, sometime in the past. These would have been serving an actual purpose then, and later, even after getting replaced, these continue to remain with the human society, joining a vast kitty of abstractions, and does not leave us, even once situation demands so. Why we are never freed over nature. As mentioned, many of these would be the ones that got discarded at opportune moments in the past, when external or internal forces made our forefathers view some part of the current living style as superfluous, inconvenient or dangerous, and remained with the human society, though redundant. But, unlike the way mechanical elements got treated, there was never a planned attempt to identify and eliminate the redundancies of life. On the contrary, later generations started holding these in very high esteem. In fact, it is worth noting here how, while dealing with machines, the full range and power of human intelligence always come to fore. We very well know, everywhere, some form of routine repair is necessary, at intervals based on the conditions and circumstances of use. Note also how we take pride in our ability for identifying the cardinal as well as for overlooking the insignificant. But all these are missing when we deal with our own fortune. The result is, we have successfully added another abstraction called fond memories, which made it all the more attractive to hoard these for no reason. Not only that there is no gainful use, but also the time and effort spent on these effectively put a brake to the forward momentum the human race would have acquired. Consequently, there is a delay in identifying, receiving and responding to fresh input. In short, we are in a vicious circle. Because of the hoarded memory, fresh input gets coloured before we have a chance to react. Hence our reaction is incorrect, which lead to unsavoury results, and we go back to our memory and the way ahead. I think what is happening is, unlike all other species of life, humans are in a continuous process of learning their response to inputs. Memory, in fact the past response is stored therein, makes it easier to form a fresh response by providing an easy guide, a reference, or a standard. The same becomes rather difficult when the input, and consequently, the desired response, are changing fast. Or, in a fast-changing world, it adds to the constraints one is already in. Therefore, the race needs to undergo a planned overhaul at certain intervals and shed much of the stored responses, such that human nature always is in sync with the current realities. I find it rather amusing that we haven't thought about this earlier. By now we know, unlike other forms of life, humans have to inculcate and develop necessary routines, patterns and other requirements, and changes in habits, for the very need of staying alive. But why is that? Here we overlook the need to do away with the old ones. When we know that clearing the unwanted or the excess is an essential need to maintain the health of machines, or of the domesticated animals, why didn't we institute in our life a regime to discard old and unwanted experiences, which will result in a lifestyle that shall also release mankind from the influence of the past? I think we are just following whatever we have come to observe among other forms of life, but all the elements that are unique to humans have so far not received the attention it deserves. Therefore the current understanding of human nature is grossly inadequate, to say the least. Though many of the behavioural patterns we proudly brandish may happen to be helpful to us, it is limited to functions and activities we share with other forms of life. Even then, one cannot be sure that there isn't a better way, unless one makes an attempt to find one. Human race needs to go back to the plotting table, and come up with fresh ideas about how to live and originate human nature. Chapter 6. How to make human society peaceful. If all that is wrong with us is in the misplaced or untimely choice of our responses, how can it be corrected? Well, let every form of response flourish. The one most suitable will naturally survive. Today, we understand that infectious diseases like flu, chickenpox and pneumonia are caused by microscopic organisms, bacteria and viruses. This, the germ theory of diseases, in fact opened our eyes. With this knowledge, we have developed ways to treat and prevent infections, or diseases spreading unspeakable tragedy. The issue, in a similar manner, won't a new and different approach to mental health empower us in facing issues of harmony in society? I think, yes, it will. In fact, all our issues in the behavioral plane can be grouped as misplaced or unsuitable responses, whether as actions, reactions, or other expressions, all of which would have been the desired choice elsewhere. And in instances where the response fit, its intensity would be making it a misfit. A society without peace is the direct result of this lack of harmony. To me, while seeking the origin of such an incongruity, one thing is becoming clear. Our adherence to a particular set of responses, which we term as the appropriate ones, does have the potential to make any natural response unacceptable, and it is a huge canvas, limited only by the current ambience, or we involuntarily suppress much of our natural reactions, at least some of which could have been the best suited ones at that instant, or our reluctance to accept any other kind of response even when suggested so with all sincerity, could be the one making our position untenable to others. And the cascading effect of the original response followed by such unsustainable actions and reactions by various entities that come across this, results in instances of unrest, that too, for no specific grounds. Actually, this is why we find it difficult to contain unrest. There is no real reason for it. Once the unrest sets in, the original, incongruent response of some random entity that would have caused it, gets submerged in a sea of reactions. Each such reaction assuming a degree of depth, urgency, or other parameters depending on the instantaneous feeling of intensity or abhorrence felt by the reacting entity. The responses tend to assume a form that will be unrecognizable from the original action of incongruence. Also, the response can occupy a wide canvas, depending solely on things like creativity, imagination, or aesthetic sensibility of the respondent. As a result, anybody trying to find an answer to the instances of current unrest will never have the luxury of having an inkling about the incongruent actions, the original cause. In addition, each such response, from different entities, being wholly dependent on the dramatic capabilities or exhibitor leanings of the respondent, those who prod further will find it difficult to see beyond its bedazzlement. This is the reason, I think, in all instances of disharmony, the fundamental cause is never found. In fact, due to the same reason, much of the writings on such topics are mostly abstract, philosophical, and perhaps scholarly dissertations. The cause. But the fact is, when our conditioned response start producing such established, dazzling reactions, it becomes an issue. That being true for the natural responses from each of us, turning anything into an issue is dependent only on current or local sensibilities or both. For example, see the religious sphere, rather than the hate content of an event. What really would spark an issue is the current, local reaction to certain happening. You see, an event does not maintain its hateful nature, except in a social group, which, for certain reasons, would have painted it so. Rather, that particular group is a conditioned one. Or, we can say that conditioned behavior is acting like a germ. Just as germs are spreading diseases without our knowledge, or dazzling, conditioned responses are also spreading issues of mental health with no intervention from our side. I agree. Presently we do not see this as issues of mental health, but we better. Thus, whatever social issues are there in our midst could be happening as a result of some of our conditioned responses, either in the form of impediments we impose on our conduct, or unbridled celebrations, or both, either by us, ourselves, or by others. What are we doing now? I agree we are always aware of the incendiary nature of our society, the most common places to observe sparks of a destructive nature being language, religion, or ethnicity. But events do not elicit an appropriate reaction, since, whenever we observe a violent reaction, say in matters concerning religion, rather than looking for the source of violence, we direct our efforts to the particular aspects of religions that took part in it, and we may issue corrective or punitive actions to contain those aspects. This goes on, as it had been since the dawn of history. Whenever the disturbance becomes too much to handle, we resort to some kind of urgent, symptomatic cure that can make some difference, and forget about such issues till the next time it erupts. Such a lackadaisical approach to an issue that is crucial to our well-being needs to be investigated further. Contrast this with the material world. Here, I think we approach even less significant issues with an open, alert mind, and keep looking for answers. And answers come, making our life more and more comfortable. But, when it comes to the spiritual world, we are very clear about two things. 1. We are unwilling to question spiritual matters. 2. We are quite vehement in our objections to others doing so. Whereas the opposite is true for the material world. Not only that we are quite happy to question any matter relating to the physical world, but also we are eager to help others doing so. Why so? Are we afraid that we may stumble upon some answer? My answer: what do we need to do? I think we need to be more inclusive while teaching ourselves about correct responses in a given situation, rather than assessing a few of the responses as correct and some other ones as wrong. We need to mold ourselves to appreciate all responses as valid, a few of those perhaps more appropriate at the given instant than the others. For example, we already know there are many dimensions to each issue. Some of those I myself have tried to portray through my hubs. What stops us from reevaluating all our priorities and responses in the light of those? Perhaps that can result in a complete shift to our system of education, which will usher in a society with a different set of ambitions, desires, etc., that are more conducive to peace and harmony. But it is nothing new. In fact, we already know this. We apply this philosophy in our appreciation of the material world. For example, we know different elements, compounds, and other stuff need to go into the constitution of things to meet the desired requirements. And we never rest, taking one line of analysis, even if it led us to the desired result. We know that every constituent is there to meet some need, or cause something undesirable, or both. But when it comes to the societal plane, we have molded ourselves to think of all responses other than a few chosen ones, unnecessary, or dangerous. And by constantly suppressing some of our responses, we are encouraging unknowingly instances of unrest. Therefore, we need to permit a wide variety of responses from all, leading to spontaneous evolution of priorities. And the actions for it should begin at home. Don't be adhered inflexibly to whatever one is attached to. Remember also, a flexible adhesion makes a stronger joint, one that can withstand more forces of disruption. The ultimate answer that completes all that is needed to put an end to instances of unrest, which is only this: let each and every reaction bloom. Selective breeding of ideas, the favourite pastime of the world since long, is still possible, but at a much slower pace, one not discernible easily.